I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening to everybody. Thanks for being here this evening. We are a little short-handed tonight, missing our Vice President, Ms. Rochelle Ross, and we understand that she's going to be watching tonight, so we just wanted to say hello to her and hope she starts feeling better soon. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called work session board meeting. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be two open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation, if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if a person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. So before I turn it over for superintendent's comments, I just wanted to take a quick minute to congratulate the LD Bell Band, who competed at the Bands of America Super Regional in San Antonio this weekend. I'm a band parent going back to 2007, so I know how difficult that competition is. I've been to a lot of competitions all over the country, and in my estimation, that's probably in the top 3 of most competitive band competitions in the country that happen every year. And Bell came in 7th place out of about, I think there were 63 bands total, so that was a great showing. So congratulations to the Bell Band. Dr. Harrington?
The one reminder, we'll be hosting a home football game on Friday night at Pennington. So it'll be Trinity versus Timber Creek at 7:30. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Go Trojans. Go Trojans.
Any clarifications required?
None at this time.
All right, so we're going to do our recognition for National Merit semifinalists. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Johnson.
All right, over 1.3 million juniors and about 21,000 high schools entered into the 2024 National Merit Scholarship Program by taking the 2022 preliminary SAT and National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, also known as the NMSQT, which served as an initial screening for program entrance. The nationwide pool of semifinalists includes the highest scoring entrants in each state. About 16,000 of the high scorers, representing less than 1% of the nation's high school graduating seniors, qualify as National Merit semifinalists in each of the programs. They are the only participants who have an opportunity to advance in the competition to get 7,140 National Merit Scholarship Awards, which will be announced in February. Tonight, we recognize Lucas Case, who was representing us in Lubbock for the regional cross-country meet, and we're excited to celebrate him today.
Congratulations, that's a huge achievement. All right, we're ready for open forum number 1, but we don't have any cards for that. So at this time, the board will adjourn into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Opens Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551, the board will adjourn into closed session pursuant to sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.076.
is everything the coach says.
At this time, the board will reconvene into open session. We're ready for reports and presentations. Any questions on disbursements for the month of October 2023? All right, item 7.02, HEB ISD Health Insurance Update. Ms. Tuttle.
All right, several months ago, you requested a report on health insurance and HEB ISD, and we are so appreciative of the Board of Trustees' support of our employees and your continued prioritization of ensuring that we're competitive with regard to employee compensation. And so these are the components that are going to be covered in the presentation tonight. And I'm very happy to present to you Karen Rose, our Benefits and Risk Manager, and she's going to take it from here.
Thank you, Cicely. So today we're going to start out by talking a little bit about the history of TRS Active Care, so you kind of get an idea of where all of this started. And so back in 2000, lots of districts had a hard time finding health insurance for all of their employees. So during the 77th Texas Legislature session in 2001, TRS was given authority to create TRS Active Care. And at that, thank you. And at that time, there were quite a few rules set in place. The rules were once you became a member and participated in TRS Active Care, you couldn't opt out. The law required you to remain in the plan. Additionally, they indicated that you could not offer competing health insurance. They also set the premiums for a district contribution. So the state had to contribute $75 per employee per month. Districts had to contribute a minimum of $150 for a total of $225 per month. And then additionally, if you had 500 or fewer employees, you were required to participate in TRS Active Care. And then the next year, 2003, districts with more than 1,000 employees had the option to opt in to TRS, and that's when HEB decided to join in September of 2003. So fast forward to 2019. At that time, the districts were allowed to pay $2,000 to request claims data. And so you'd pay $2,000 and TRS would give you all the claims data they had available. At that same time, in 2019, there was a school district that used their District of Innovation to figure out a creative way to get around some of the loopholes in the law, and they were allowed to offer TRS Active Care. They also offered a competing health insurance plan, so their employees could choose which plan to go with. So TRS, did what they needed to do and eventually closed that loophole. And then September of 22, Senate Bill 1444 now allows districts to opt out of TRS Active Care, which is what we've been asking for many years. So, of course, if you opt out of TRS Active Care, you have to stay out of the plan for a minimum of 5 years before you can ask to rejoin. Additionally, if you sign up for the first time to join TRS Active Care, you have to remain in the plan for 5 years. So now we're going to take a look at the health insurance premium data. So here we have the Active Care HD plan. HD stands for the high deductible. So you can look back at the 09-10 school year. This was a new plan back then. The premium for employee-only coverage, they only paid $20 a month for this plan. Fast forward to 23-24 school year, the same plan is now $250 a month for an employee. So in the last 14 years, that was an 1,150% increase in the employee-only premium. Currently, we have 648 employees enrolled in this HD health plan. Down at the bottom right, you'll see 438%. Just so you know, that's the percent of increase for all different tiers, for the employee-only, spouse, children, and family. Here we have the primary plan. This was a new plan during the 2021 school year. Started out at $161 and is now $236 per employee per month. This is the lowest cost plan that we have to offer, and it's the most highly sought-after plan. Most of our employees are enrolled in this one, which we have 656 employees enrolled. Primary Plus, we have 255 employees enrolled. It started during the 14-15 school year at $225, and now it's $316. HMO plan also started in the 15-16 school year, and you can see the current premium is almost $372 a month. Lastly, we have Active Care 2. This plan back in the 06-07 school year started out at $106. Now it's $788 for employee-only coverage. Back during the 18-19 school year, this plan was closed to new entrants. So anybody that was on the plan, they were allowed to keep it. We currently have 15 employees enrolled in this Active Care 2 plan. And this last slide just shows you a couple of the other plans that are no longer offered. Now we have the health insurance trend data. So this chart shows you the average enrollment per year. So like the blue line currently shows you for the 23-24 school year. For September, we have 1,604 employees enrolled in our health insurance. The green line shows you the percentage of full-time employees enrolled. So we currently have 53.2% of our employees are enrolled in health insurance. So if you go back to the 10-11 school year through today, you can see we kind of average anywhere between 53 to 61% of our employees enrolled in our health insurance. This slide shows you the current number of employees enrolled. So we have 998 teachers currently enrolled in our health insurance. You can see the professional support, and at the end, the top of the chart, you can see our auxiliary staff members that are currently enrolled. So we have 1,443 professionals and paras enrolled, and we have 161 auxiliary staff enrolled in our health insurance.
So these numbers are just for employees only, not families or anything like that?
It includes all. So it's if the employee's covering themselves, their spouse, their children, it's just showing the total number of employees that have health insurance. So we don't have it broken down by the number of members that they're covering.
All right.
We can get you that if you'd like that data.
No, I'm just want to make sure I'm thinking about it right. So this is based off of our number of employees, not the employees and their families.
Correct. Okay. Correct. Yes, sir. And this slide shows you the percent of full-time employees enrolled. So we just saw that 998 teachers were enrolled in our health insurance, which means 66.5% of all teachers are enrolled in health insurance. You can see 72, almost 73% of our administrators are enrolled in our health insurance. The slide on the right will show you the percent of auxiliary full-time employees enrolled in our health insurance. So now we have some claims data for you to look at. So back in September of 2021, TRS was required to provide us claims data for free. So this was the first year where we didn't have to pay the $2,000. TRS was required to give us 3 years of claims data. They only gave us active care data, so any of the HMO information, that was excluded from the data that they provided to us. So the way you look at these charts, this shows you the claims cost paid versus the premiums collected. So this is for last school year, the 22-23 school year. The top part shows you the claims cost. So for example, Active Care HD the plan paid out $4.8 million in medical expenses, an additional $1.3 in pharmacy expenses for a total of $6.1 million. If you go down to the bottom chart under Active Care HD, these are the premiums collected. So the EE stands for employees. So the employees paid in almost $3 million. ER is employer, and that includes the state's contribution. So that was $2 million for a total of almost $5 million collected in premiums. So when we do the math, claims cost minus the premiums collected, the plan lost $1.2 million last school year, just on the active care plan alone. When you look at all 4 plans together, you can see the plan lost $3.1 million.
How do deductibles work into that?
So these are claims costs that what the insurance company actually paid out. So this excludes co-pays, premiums, things like that. So this is truly what TRS paid out. Here we have the 21-22 school year. You can see $12 million paid out in claims, $10 million collected in premiums. This plan lost $1.5 million. 2021, the plan lost over $600,000. And we have some great news. The 1920 school year, the plan made $1.3 million. Keep in mind, this was the beginning of COVID. So of course, many of us couldn't go to the doctor. You couldn't have surgeries. So this is the only year that the plan actually made a little money. In the 18-19 school year, once again, the plan lost $2.7 million. So when you add all that up over the last 5 years, the plan lost $6.7 million. And then this information is important. I'll explain why here in just a second. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the claims data. There's a couple of important notes for you to know about what we're going to look at. We have high-cost claimants, HCC. So these are claimants whose claims exceeded $50,000. So the data we're looking at, it could be for an employee, it could be for a spouse, or it could be for a dependent child. These claims include medical expenses only, so it excludes any of the pharmacy costs. So on the left, you can see the 22-23 school year high-cost claimants. So there were 32 members whose claims totaled almost $5 million. And that was about 45% of all the medical claims paid out during last school year. The way you read the chart, the health conditions, so for example, the pregnancy/liveborn, you can see $1.7 million was paid out. That was 4 claimants. Together, they paid out $1.7 million, and each of those claimants, their claims exceeded $50,000. So of course, pregnancy, we're mainly female, so we had lots of maternity claims, but 4 of these claims exceeded the $50,000. So the 21-22 school year, there were 24 members. Their expenses were almost $4 million, which was 42% of all medical claims cost. Then you have the 20-21 school year, 17 members, $3 million. And then 19-20, there were 20 members with over $2 million. So self-funded versus fully insured. So the great news is now that the district has the option to opt out of TRS Active Care, we have a couple of different options that we can go with. So first we have self-funded health insurance. So this is where the district is liable for all the claims cost. So typically when a situation like this, the district would purchase stop-loss coverage. There's an aggregate stop-loss which says once the district pays out $10 million, anything paid out over $10 million, the insurance company is going to cover. Usually you have individual stop-loss as well. And it says once the district pays out $30,000 for this member, anything over that, the insurance company will cover. So the great thing about self-funded, the district has complete control over the plan design. We can set our premiums. We can tell them which doctors to go to. So it's nice to have complete control. The other option that we have is to be fully insured. So typically the insurance company is going to look at the very little claims data that we have available, and they will determine what the premium needs to be for that year. So between the employer and the employee, we pay a certain amount each month in premiums, and then the insurance company will be liable for all the claims cost. So the upside to that is that the employer knows exactly what the plan's going to cost that year. Initially, you don't have to worry about any financial risk because we know that if the insurance company didn't set the premiums right, meaning they took in less premiums than what they paid out in claims, they have to assume all that risk. The downside, let's say we have a great year and we don't pay out in claims as much as what we've collected, so the plan was actually in the black this year. We don't get to benefit from that if we're fully insured. The insurance company gets to keep that money. And typically, if an insurance company, is not able to collect enough premiums to cover claims, they're going to try to recoup their costs the next year, and they'll probably give you a rate increase. Do you have a question? No. Okay. Okay.
So with the self-funded, you partner with some organization that runs it for you?
Typically, yes. Yes, that's what you do. You find an insurance company. Of course, we would have an agent or a broker that would help guide us with these decisions. Back when I first started in 2000, we were self-funded. And so we had an insurance agent that helped guide us through all the decisions that we needed to make, found the insurance company that we would use, and that's typically what happens with self-funded. And so what does all this mean for HEB? Well, Now that we have the option to opt out, that's fantastic, but we have to look at all the data we have available before we make a decision. So that's why we're providing you with all this info. We need to look at the claims data. Are we currently collecting enough premiums to cover claims? Well, we're not there. We need to look at the high-cost claimants. Are those people still currently enrolled with us, or have they left the plan? So there's lots of different things that we need to look at. Based on the data that we've reviewed, we feel it would be really risky for us to leave TRS active care right now. It doesn't mean that we're going to, make that decision every year to come. We're going to continue to look at our claims data every single year. Of course, we know we might be able to find a fully insured product that would meet our needs, but we just always run the risk of the rate skyrocketing year after year. We do have some districts around us that have opted out of TRS active care. The data we've collected from them, currently they say that their pharmacy coverage is not nearly as great as what they had with TRS active care, which means their employees are paying more for their pharmacy expenses. So based on the data that we have available, we know that we need several more years of talking to surrounding districts to really see how it's gone for them to be self-funded or fully insured outside of TRS. So we think maybe after the 24 school year, 24-25 school year is when we'll have enough data to really make a decision to determine if it's the best for us to opt out. So once again, looking back at the claims versus premiums, a lot of people have said out there that, if we were self-funded, our premiums would be lower. Based on our data, you can kind of see that's not true. Unfortunately, if we were self-funded, we would definitely have to increase our premiums. We'd probably also have to increase our deductibles, maximum out-of-pocket, co-pays just for the plan to break even. So monthly contribution structure and options. And so, of course, we want to be competitive in surrounding districts. The district has contributed the minimum of $225 for over 20 years. And of course, over the last several years, throughout time, we've always considered perhaps increasing our contribution. But of course, ultimately, the district wants to provide a significant pay raise to all employees versus just helping the 60% employees enrolled in health insurance. So when looking at the teacher starting salary, we have always been, for many, many years, number one. We've had the highest starting teacher salary. Currently, you can see that we are tied for 5th place. Our starting teacher salary is $61,500. So we look pretty good, ranking number 5. Then you look at the health insurance contribution. So unfortunately, HEB is at the very bottom. We are only one of 2 districts in our area contributing the minimum of $225. So the charts that you see on the left, you can see there's a couple of cells that are highlighted different colors. There are a couple of different districts that do vary their district contribution based on the category of the employee. So like for their lower paid employees, their district does contribute a little bit more to their health insurance. The chart on the right shows you currently where we are in the green at the bottom. If the district were to contribute $25 more per month towards health insurance, you can kind of see where we would be lumped in right there with Burleson and Everman and Mansfield. If we contributed $50 more, we'd move up a little bit. And then if we contributed $75 more, we would be at the $300 mark, which is about the average. I think the average amongst all these districts, the contributions, about $306 per month. And then lastly, we want to look at the total compensation. So total compensation is the teacher's starting salary plus the annual health insurance contribution that the district contributes. So when you look at that, the starting salary plus our annual health insurance contribution, you can see we're tied for 11th place. If we were to contribute $250 instead of $225, you can see where we would rank if we were contributed $275, and then where we would rank if we contributed $300. So survey responses, all exiting employees, we do send them an exit survey. One of the questions that we ask at the very beginning is, what factors led to your decision to leave HEB ISD? And you can see over the last 5 years, most recently the 22-23 school year, 15.6% of those exiting employees said salary or benefits was a factor that led to their decision to leave. So now we have the wonderful Affordable Care Act, the ACA Affordability Guidelines. So you're going to see me use the word affordable in air quotes. Under the ACA, the district is required, all employers are required to provide affordable health care coverage to their employees. So to determine whether or not health insurance is affordable, it depends on the employee's take-home pay. So we don't have access to people's bank accounts, so we really don't know what their income is. So the IRS has created these things called safe harbors. And so they said we can look at an employee's rate of pay, like what they make per hour, to determine if our health insurance is affordable. We can use the federal poverty line, or we can look at their W-2 form, whatever their wages are in box 1, to determine if our insurance is affordable. So the second piece of that is the IRS has created an affordability threshold percentage. So for the 22-23 school year, the affordability threshold was 9.12% to determine affordability. Basically what that means is that in order to determine affordability, we take the employee's hourly rate of pay times 130 hours. So the IRS has created this number. They said, if you work 130 hours in a month, you're considered full-time. So they did 30 hours a week on an average, gives you 130 hours a month. So then that, you multiply hourly rate times 130, that gives you your total monthly salary. The threshold this year is 9.12%, which equals the maximum monthly health insurance premium allowed for the health insurance to be considered affordable. So we're going to give you a live example. Our lowest paid staff members are paid $15.73 per hour. Times 130 hours is a little over $2,000 per month. Multiply that times 9.12. In order for our health insurance to be affordable for this for this person, their health insurance premium cannot exceed $186.50. Our lowest paid premium right now for an employee is $236. So ACA by the numbers. So ultimately, we have this wonderful threshold of 9.12%, which means if we want to say we're going to look at a person's hourly rate in order to determine if the health insurance is affordable, based on our current employee amount of health insurance premium of $236, if an employee makes $19.91 an hour, health insurance is affordable for them. If we want to use the safe harbor W-2, if a person makes over $31,000, our health insurance is affordable. So if our health insurance is deemed unaffordable, well, what does that mean? It means that if a person that is offered unaffordable health insurance goes to the marketplace to buy health insurance, we could be charged $360 per month per employee that purchased that marketplace health insurance. So that's the risk that we're taking right now. The chart below kind of shows you where we're a little vulnerable. We've kind of determined we could use rate of pay to say these employees, it's affordable. We can use the W-2 for certain people saying this is affordable. Then we have this group of 120 employees enrolled in our health insurance right now where we can't figure out a way to make the health insurance appear to be affordable for them. So these employee groups, we have some secretaries, CTAs, teacher assistants, cafeteria specialists, and bus monitors. To throw a little more, another wrench in this little this chain, if a person doesn't work full-time, we don't have to worry about affordability for them. So typically you have cafeteria specialists and bus monitors. They typically don't work 130 hours a month, so we really can exclude them. But for right now, we know we need to kind of focus on 120 employees that their health insurance is unaffordable. Just so you know, this is the very first time our health insurance has been considered unaffordable. The reason being because health insurance premiums increased quite a bit this last school year. So we've done the math for you. In order to be considered affordable, we have different employee groups. For example, the first group, if the district were to contribute $274.51, which is almost $50 more than what we contribute now, then employees in these categories, their health insurance would be considered affordable. So our recommendation to address the ACA unaffordability, we're recommending that effective January 1st of 2024, that the district contribution increase by $50 for employees who make below $50,000. This will ensure that all of our employees are offered affordable health insurance. So the district would contribute $275 for these employees instead of $225, and this would decrease their premium from $236 per month to $186. So currently we have 289 employees that are enrolled in our health insurance that would fall into this category. If we were to contribute that additional $50, that would cost the district $115,000 if we made that change for January through August of 2024. We've also given you more data. The cost of potential increases for the 24-25 school year. This is based on actual health insurance enrollment, so this is not all employees. It's just those that are currently enrolled in health insurance. So the way you read this chart is for auxiliary. If you wanted to contribute an additional $50 for them for next school year, the entire school year, that would cost $96,000. And you can see we have it broken down by the staffing table categories. And then I will turn this back over to Cicely.
We know that the board's goal is to remain competitive with other districts. We also understand that a large increase to the contribution could impact the ability to provide an increase to salary, and that's why we've provided you with some recommendations that are conservative, but also address some of the things that we've looked at in Karen's data tonight. And so as you've seen tonight, and I think the thing that is most important for us to remember is that to be competitive, salary increases and contribution are equally important. And so we are certainly prepared to answer any questions that you have. Also, if there are recommendations that you would like to make, we can certainly move forward. For example, if you want to make a recommendation for the January increase, we could certainly add that as an agenda item at our next board meeting, and that's something that you all can certainly discuss. But we just wanted to provide you with some options and some data to mull over and let us know what your wishes are. Are there any questions for Karen about the data tonight? Yes, Fred.
So first off, Karen, this is awesome. Thank you very much for this data. And you may not know the answer to this, but maybe get back to us. Assuming we go forward with the increase, do you have any idea what possible more staff would want to hop on health insurance other than the 66% that currently is there?
That is a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. It's something that if we make this change for January, this is not considered a qualifying event, so it wouldn't allow new participants to enroll this year, but during the summer when we have open enrollment, it will open it up to everyone next school year.
Not to paint you in a box, but would you anticipate that more would participate?
Well, anytime price decreases, the participation rate's going to go up.
That's what I'm thinking
Just
too.
you don't know what percentage.
Correct.
And I don't think that it's going to, I think if the premium was $20 or $50 that they would have to pay, absolutely, we would see those numbers skyrocket. But I think with a premium still being $186, it's still pretty expensive for employees to afford.
Agreed.
Yeah, but you see so many people, and I have employees who have teachers as spouses, and it's a balance between, okay, which one is more affordable?
Correct.
And as soon as the teeter-totter tips, they're going to jump off one and onto the other. So
Absolutely.
you don't know where that point is, but
You're exactly right.
Other questions?
no questions? Thank you very much.
Oh, hang on. So, Karen, thank you for the presentation. I think this is exactly what we were looking for when we asked for it a couple of months ago. I think that this really illuminates, some of the shortfalls in the way that the funding has happened over the last 20 years, where there was great wisdom in trying to pump as much money as possible on the salary side, but we did that to the detriment of the health insurance side, so where we continue to fall down the total compensation numbers. So if you're looking for a recommendation, and I'm not speaking for the board, but this is where I would like us to go, and that is a couple of things. One is to continue with TRS active care, but look at it on an annual basis to make sure that we continue to make that decision informed year to year. I would like the health insurance, the $50 to be in place in January if Dobie, if you confirm for us that we're able to absorb that increased cost to do that.
Yes, sir. Fortunately, this year, we're in a position where our added enrollment is helping us out there, so we can absorb that without any problem.
Okay, so you have no concern with us doing that with a January 1st going forward, okay. So I would be in favor of that. And then I would be in favor of doing the option 2 on the increase for all staff with the caveat of that it's discussed within the context of the entire budget for next year, that if there's a way to do it, we do as much as we can, but then this not be a one-time fix, that as we talk about salary numbers as we do every year, this is part of the conversation where we don't just look at salary numbers, but we look at total compensation to make sure that we don't make a fix this year and then we realize 20 years from now we never did it again. But that this be an ongoing conversation. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, Chris, I agree with everything that you just said, but I feel compelled to talk here about the fact that funding is being held hostage by the legislature right now. And, you know, this board has always been and continues to be interested in doing everything that we can for our employees. But we may get to a point where we don't have a choice.
Right.
I agree that right now we have a choice, and you know, Mr. Williams is telling us, you know, we can afford this, and you know, I personally want to do everything that we can for our employees, but I just feel the need to put it out there that at some point it may be taken out of our hands by the legislature.
And what we will commit to you as an executive leadership team is that as we begin our planning for the 24-25 school year at the end of this month, we will include that this information so that as we are looking at compensation, this can be considered. And we will also keep an eye on the threshold to ensure that we are affordable for next year should that threshold change. And certainly, absolutely hear you, Julie, Chris. Certainly, we understand it's your desire, but we also want to ensure that we are being good stewards. So we will keep this information, and we will be able to share this with the board members in our staffing meetings in February. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, 7.03, goals 1 and 3, scorecard update. Is that Dr. Johnson?
All right, Cicely, I think it's coming right back up, right behind me. So goal 1, student achievement, increase student attendance. 100% of campuses in the district will achieve 97 or higher percent. And just like Mr. Williams spoke about our increase in enrollment, we also see an increase in attendance. We're at 96.6% over prior years, and so looking pretty good there. And Cicely's got the next one.
And we are very pleased with our numbers of staff attendance for the first 6 weeks. We are at 97.26%, and we think that's fantastic.
Another reason why we want to do right by our teachers, because they're doing right by us.
That's awesome. Any questions?
Thank you. 7.04, Dr. Norgard, beginning of year reading 3D and M-class math.
All right, good evening. So getting into report season here. So we are looking at some of our youngest learners in this report. So we're going to take a look at our data that helps drive our instruction. So reading 3D, our acronym, those are early literacy measures. Just a reminder, DIBELS and Lectura. measure fluency in English and in Spanish, and BAS and SEL measure our comprehension pieces in English and in Spanish. These are related to the strategic plan with success measure 1.2 about early literacy. And just some context for analysis as we're looking at these numbers to remember that last year, everything but Dibbles changed, and Dibbles had changed just a couple of years. So you'll see a couple of times when we look at trend lines, we just have to keep that in mind that the tests were adjusted, both elements for Spanish and the comprehension piece for English. So when I look at year-to-year trend data, so these are different groups of kindergartners, but that bottom row, our current kindergartners have increased in performance for Dibbles and Lectura over last year's kindergartners. There's not a lot of cohort data because we just got them. Many of them we may have had in pre-K, but we don't have the same assessment to carry in a trend line. When we look at comprehension, this is why I laid that groundwork for context. Previously, we always reported TRC, our comprehension piece. It was combined, English and Spanish, and now there are separate assessments. So another year from now, I'll be bringing you all of that data separate, but I did want to include that historical when it was combined, so I averaged them. I weighted the averages back together. We have more students testing in English than Spanish to see where we are holding. So a slight dip on the English side, but a big gain with our smaller number of students who are testing in Spanish. So when you put all that together, we're even with the performance of last year's kindergartners on comprehension. So when we look at first grade, we see lots of green arrows, so that makes us happy that we're continuing to see that incremental gain, some large jumps since switching to the Lectura. We really feel like that was a much more aligned assessment and appropriate for our students testing in Spanish. But we are seeing that incremental gain, again, different groups of students. So if this is how this year's first graders are compared to last year's, how did they do compared to their kindergarten performance? So the green line are our students testing in English and the yellow in Spanish. This is pretty consistent what we see. They grow across 1 year, and then you see that year summer slide when they passed from kindergarten end of year measure into their first grade BOY. So very consistent with the typical patterns that we see on Dibbles and Lectura for this year's first graders. When we look at their comprehension, actually very even with last year, which was the first year of this new comprehension measure. Spanish saw a larger increase. So we'll look at their comprehension. That's compared to last year's first graders, but compared to themselves, this is that kindergarten V that we see this whenever we talk about comprehension, because this is not a stagnant target. You have to remember what we expect a kindergartner to comprehend at the beginning of the year. We expect a lot more of them at the middle of the year and even more at end of year. And really where that target moves in end of year is huge. We've gone from just how am I holding the book and turning pages and the print concepts and to really needing to understand some things about what they're reading. So that is common in our cohort data, but crossing from the end of kinder into first grade, it's actually very similar to what this group of students showed on the Dibbles and Lectura side. So then we look at our second graders. Slight increase in English and slight decrease in Spanish. More cohort history data, because of course this group of students we've had through kinder and first grade. A little more variability there. That yellow being our Spanish line, they actually grew a little bit, which is unusual, usually crossing over a summer. We see that slide in performance. It's not a huge shift, so it's not really out of line or statistically significant, but it's just not typically the pattern that we see. And on the comprehension side, we saw really nice gains on the English side and that small incremental gain on our students testing in Spanish for a nice overall gain. And when I look, there's that, again, that kindergarten, different group of students, but we see this pretty much every year from our kindergartners. And they held consistent. They came in to second grade BOY right exactly where they had exited our first grade EOY on the comprehension side. So do you have any questions about reading 3D? All right, we'll jump over to math. Early numeracy measures, so M-Class Math is our assessment that we use for this. This is tied to success measure 1.3b. Right next to 1.2b, we've got our early numeracy that we're tracking for kinder, first, and second grade. Context, I have to pause here for just a minute. We continue to be challenged by this assessment. You've heard me speak to this before. Under House Bill 3, we've been doing Reading 3D for a long time. House Bill 3 said you need to be tracking students, you need to be progress monitoring in early numeracy as well as early literacy, although it wasn't really tied or supported in the same way, just like Math Academy was mentioned. How many Math Academy presentations have I brought to you and asked for millions of dollars to support, like our Reading Academy that's required? So reading was very strongly supported by the state. Here are instruments, here's what they're used for. You get these for free because you're doing this for the state versus math. We had very few to choose from. We chose M-Class Math because it is from Amplify, who is the publisher of Reading 3D, and we had had such positive experiences with them. They were always receptive to, hey, we're not sure that this is measuring what we think. Can we make some adjustments to the threshold? We had excellent customer service. They had a big department. We are seeing a change in that. Well, we're seeing a difference in math and just a change overall in Amplify. Our language arts coordinator is here, who's had many phone calls with Amplify this year on the reading side as well. They don't have nearly the staff in math. They're not invested in math. So I've come to you a couple years and said, but we're going to stick with it. We're going to, with good intent, hope that we see these changes. We're not. So I will tell you that the curriculum department is actively researching, is there a better instrument to use? There are more out now than there used to be. So we're going to really look, because when you look at, these are the same group of students, and I know you've probably already looked at these slides and seen the numbers, but think about what I just showed you with reading, and the math numbers just don't look appropriate. And it's really, we are testing the right things, but to the wrong threshold. There's a counting measure in kindergarten. How high can you count in 60 seconds? And we had several adults, including math coordinators and people with PhDs in math, and they were red or yellow on the test. So it's not appropriate. So we've asked for those to be changed, and they're not. So we are actively looking at another measure, but we're improving. It's just the numbers. We know these aren't where we're used to seeing numbers in HEB. So we are measuring the right things. It's just where they're putting those cutoffs are not at the right spot. But we did see an increase for our kindergartners, but we know that many more than 29% of our kindergartners are proficient in their early numeracy. All of our other data tells us that they are. For first grade, we saw the slight increase, and we can look at their growth from their kindergarten performance. There is the slide, and remember, we talked a lot in past research about summer slide in math is worse than on reading. So there is that slide, and it will be a larger slide. That's we see that over and over. Parents know how to read to their children over the summer. They don't know how to math with their kids. Bedtime math, it's a great experience. It's bonding. We did see a slight dip at second grade, but again, when this is the score range that we're talking about, we just know that this is not correctly identifying. It is giving our teachers usable data because they can see where those thresholds are. We just don't feel like this is giving you or what we need to see at the district level, the right data to guide our decisions. So we are, back to the drawing board in investigating other resources for assessment. So there's a little history, and you see, again, sharp drops for each of the summers for this group. Questions about M-Class Math? Yes, sir.
So, Dr. Norgard, first off, tell your team they're doing an amazing job, and lots of green arrows going in the right direction, which is awesome. As I look at this on a very high level, there's a dip in second grade on both reading and in math. Is there any correlation to that, or is that expected, or? Just that one grade level for both?
Just the one grade level. The math, I would say, is actually not a significant drop just because of what I know of this assessment. When they move in kinder and first grade on math, they are a one-on-one testing situation. You're sitting with me, I'm asking you some questions, you're answering. I ask you to count as high as you can count, and I'm timing you. When they move into second grade, it's a paper pencil test that they do as a whole class. So that's a little bit different testing experience. As to the reading side, that's something we've historically seen just, what we start expecting at second grade, because we really are, they're on that cusp of moving from learning to read to reading to learn. We talk a lot about the second to third grade transition and some things in there, but it's not a group that we had seen like as a cohort of from kinder to first grade we were concerned, and now from first to second.
Perfect.
Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Norgard. All right, I will start reviewing monthly regular board agenda items, financial statements for the month of August 2023. Mr. Williams.
Okay, good evening. We have tonight the financial statements for the month ending August 31st, 2023, which, as you know, is the end of our fiscal school year. So these numbers will be extremely close, if not spot on, with how our audit's going to look. And I say extremely close. The auditors still are working on stuff, and they might tweak things a little bit, but these will be really close. So we'll start with the general fund. You can see the fund balance for the general fund was $170,402,173. That represents revenues over expenditures of $8,743,210. And as I've said all year, investment interest for the year has really helped us out and is helping us out again this year. Last year we had $7,249,752 compared to $1.39 million the prior year. So quite a drastic increase. The total expenditures as of 8/31 were at 95.91%. That is a little higher than we typically spend out of our budget each year, but as you know, we've been trying to fix up a lot of things with our youth facilities and different things, and that accounts for some of that, big portion of that. State revenues were lower than what we budgeted due to lower enrollment than what was projected last year, as well as our ADA numbers did not come in as good as what we had been used to in the past. And it's probably going to be a trend moving forward. So we're certainly looking at that as we're budgeting for next year. But as I said, the investment interest was awesome. So that more than took care of what we didn't make in the loss in state funding revenues from enrollment. So all in all, the general fund budget ended up really good, all things considered. Looking at the general fund expenditure matrix, payroll ended up at 87%, which is where it almost always ends up. $177,072,479. Coming in number 2 was utilities at $5,076,626, 2%, and instructional supplies at 1% in the amount of $2,954,644. Child Nutrition Fund, again, did very well. Revenue fund balance was $6,385,905. That it is expenditures over revenues in the amount of $2,021,072. Reason for that is we did a bunch of upgrades to cafeterias, so she was trying to spend down her fund balance because she is a little bit over the threshold that TDA allows. So, and we've plan to do that again this year. So she's getting closer, but it's a good problem to have, I guess. They were at 93.33% of their budget at 8/31. So they did a great job again. Mariella did a great job. Debt service, investment in that fund helped us also in the amount of $1,815,722 compared to $211,977 last year. The fund balance for that fund was $21,536,221. That represents revenues over expenditures in the amount of $5,271,354. So what that means is we will need to look at doing another defeasance in this coming year. And we'll talk about that later on in the year as we get closer. Of course, we made our debt service payments on time in February and again in August for a total debt service payment of $36,781,000, and then of course we defeased the bonds that were approximately $5 million in the debt service fund. The Pre-K Core Knowledge Fund, fund balance was $189,476. That's revenues over expenses, $104,053. They received 106.46% of their budgeted revenue as of the fiscal year end, August 31st, and their total expenditures were at 98.97% of the budget. That fund performed as it was supposed to. Special revenue funds, these are all our governmental funds. These funds, as you know, those are multiple year funds over multiple years, so they will roll forward in next year and the year beyond for some of them. These were at 62.53% of the budget, so that's why they're at such a lower percentage number than the other funds. But our revenues in that fund always lag behind because we make the expenditures and then we request reimbursement from TEA. But all in all, they are tracking as expected. Campus activity funds. Fund balance of $3,330,887. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $557,150. Those funds did well, did normal for the year. 2018 bond. That one has a fund balance of $2,022,363. That represents expenditures over revenues $22,457,975 because we're not putting anything other than some investment interest, which again helped us out in the amount of $771,252 as compared to $127,978 last year. But the majority of those funds have been used up, and now we are. Technology still has a little bit left to use, but as of to date, they have encumbered those funds. So those 2018 bond funds will be gone very shortly. And as I said, most of those most of them were used for the Bel Air rebuild. I have a hard time saying that. And the possible bond for would be a 2024 series by the time we sell those if the bond election passes. Those total fund balance is $1,421,702. That's expenditures for last year in the amount of $1,367,102. And of course, we won't have any revenues for that fund until after tomorrow, hopefully. The locally defined capital projects fund, that has a fund balance of $47,342,756. That represents expenditures over revenue $11,451,064. The board can put funds into that, and you did last year in the amount of $6 million for the safety and security upgrade. These funds are, and again, investment interest. We had $2,066,683 in investment earnings for that fund, so that was good. And the majority in these funds are being used to finish Bel Air Elementary. I get tongue-tied on that. Finishing up the admin. Yeah, I'm telling you, maybe I'll come up with a different word. Admin annex remodel, which is done. Safety and security additions, which are still ongoing, and then of course the Trinity and LD Bell baseball, softball rebuilds, and then a few other projects here and there, and then there may be a couple that were approved facilities last year that we are still looking at to bring to the board for consideration at some point in the future. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Dobie. Any questions? All right. Budget transfers and amendment request for consideration November 2023.
Might need to make that a little bit bigger. I did give you a Friday update to detail this, and I had Stephen kind of break this down into the 4 green columns so that it would be a little easier to understand. Of course, the budget transfers are the function transfers within functions within the budget. So if there's a $10,000 transfer out of function 11, there will be a $10,000 transfer in another function. So those are all just wash out. There's no impact to the bottom line of the budget. The second column was the campus department budget rollover request. This is something HEB has done for many, many years as a budgeting tool, which basically, as I explained in the Friday update, this allows departments to roll over up to 10% of their budget, providing they have 10% left. If they don't have 10% left unspent, then they only get to roll over what was left, 5%, 6%, whatever that number was. That will have an impact to the budget of $1,139,822. And then the special revenue request rollover, that's just another rollover for projects that basically started last year or purchases that began last year. Some of those just didn't come in by the end of the year, so they can't be paid out of last year anymore because we have to close last year. So rather than making them pay that out of their current year budget that they weren't planning on doing, we asked to roll over the funds from last year's budget to accommodate for those. And most of those are big maintenance projects, really. That's why you'll see most of those in Function 51. And then that last column is an adjustment to revenue and expenditures in the amount of $1,808,000, and these are basically adjustments to the beginning of the year budget, where we're working with a big chunk of these are for like VPA. We're working with them to actually budget for field trips and different things that they have not historically budgeted for in the past. So we're trying to work those into the budget to where there's actual line item. In the past, they would win some award, go on some trip somewhere, and then they would just come and ask for money to be funded to do that, which was fine back when we had lots of extra money left over all the time. But we're getting into a season where not necessarily the case. So we want to try to start budgeting for all these line item type things. So any questions on that?
Any questions? All right. Item 8.03, purchase of student ridership solution, Smart Tag. Who's going to take this one?
I'll get started. Mr. Curbo and Mr. Schlimmons are going to tag team on this. Justin's got a presentation for you. As you know, Smart Tag, we've been looking at this for several years. We started it under Mr. Merchant back when I first got here, and then the way things worked out, we kind of put it on hold, and now we're coming back. This, we feel, is going to be a big improvement to our safety and security as far as transportation goes. Going to be a great help to our parents. So I'm going to let Justin go through his presentation real quick, and then I'll let Mr. Curbo explain the purchasing piece of it.
Welcome to the boardroom, Mr. Schlimmons.
Oh, there you are. Hi. How are you guys?
Good. Hiding over
I just
here.
heard a voice. I didn't know. Good evening. My name is Justin Slimmons. I'm Director of Transportation here with HEB. Settling in, really enjoying the position. I haven't seen you guys in a while, so. I feel like something's missing, and it's definitely Smart Tag. Definitely for our safety and security of our students. So, just as a refresher, Smart Tag is a secured mobility system for our students. They can scan on and off of our buses. Just like you see the young lady here, she has a badge, she's scanning on. That's what the tablet setup looks like on the bus. The system works based on the tablets. They're cellular active, and they receive data from the student's chip. That's basically how we know the unique identifier of the student. So, just on a personal note, the last district I worked with, they used Smart Tag for all kinds of different things, including badge identification for campuses, library, cafeteria access, things of that nature. So going with this route, we could definitely plan for the future of those things as well. So just a quick little run through. This is what the drivers will see on the tablets. You have an authorized loading and unloading screen. The green means that you're good to go. You've picked up your student, Jasmine, and there's medical information on the bottom right-hand corner, and the left there's more information. On the other side of this, you have a wrong stop or a red logo that says the student does not belong on your bus, or the student is getting off at the wrong stop with a friend, things like that. So in our district, kindergarten and first grade have to have a parent present to receive them. And this will be a list of guardians that the drivers will be able to identify when they're getting off of the bus. This eliminates a lot of things going on with parents calling saying, you know, where's the bus? Why is my bus not here yet? Medical information can be also displayed. I know in our buses, we have books full of medical info for our students. So this will be, yet again, an easier feature for our drivers to utilize the medical stuff for emergencies. On the admin side, on our side of things, you'll be able to see, if you'll look at the map, you'll see a whole bunch of little rectangles. Those rectangles will be one of 3 to 4 colors. You hope that they're all on time, but you'll be able to have a bird's eye view of where all of your buses are time-wise. For routing, we are going to use the routing program that comes along with SmartTag, which will replace our VersaTrans software that we're not pleased with at this time, and this program will actually play nicely with that SmartTag system. So from an emergency and safety and security standpoint, the software is a game changer because you have access to the rosters in real time. So in the event of an accident or an emergency, you can send all of your information over to your district official that can notify parents or put out a statement. So again, further with that notification, this map here, you can see the little dot. It will show you all of the information displayed on the bottom right hand of the screen. Their name, their grade, their age, their address, all things that are asked for on most police reports. Parent notifications, this is a big one. This is, when I spoke with my representative, they are soft testing the app. I know the app has been a little here and there, but it is stated to be done and completed by the time we implement the system, should we consider to do that. But parents will have the ability to see all kinds of information as far as where the bus is. They can request text message notifications and alerts for their students. On the campus side, the campuses will be able to see their students and only their students so that they won't get confused with other buses or other campuses. But they will be able to answer phone calls in the office. If a parent calls and says, where's my kid? I can pull up their information and tell exactly where they are. So this is kind of a little bit more of what the alert is now. If a parent is signed up for the alerts, they'll receive things such as the bus is approaching, the student is currently on the bus, and it will also give you times, date and time stamps of that information. And that information is held for, I believe it's up to 7 years on their server, so if we ever have to go back and look. So the big one here too, and I actually visited with Mr. Dan Phillips, we kind of talked about this one, evacuation or unification. In the event you needed to evacuate a school, SmartTag would come in really handy. You don't have to have a physical badge for a student to come on the tablet. You can manually enter their information. That way we would know exactly who's on that bus. So you can pick up your kids, drive to a safe location, put all their names on the tablet, then there will be no guessing about where your kids are. You would know. So that was SmartTag in a quick few slides, and I wish you guys would consider this for the district. It's definitely a safety and security option for us. So a little bit about implementation. Pending the approval, we're going to look at installation in early next year, and we hope to go live for the fall of '24. And that's all I've got.
Justin, I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
You kind of lost in all the lines and the squares and the dots.
Yes, sir.
If I'm a parent, can I go on my phone or computer and see that my kid got on the bus?
Yes, sir. And only your kid.
Right, only my kid.
Yes.
And also, we've known that we can see where the bus is at all times.
Yes, sir.
Now.
So
Now I know if my kid got on the bus.
that's correct. So a scenario, a student, a parent calls and the student's not at school. Well, did they ride the bus? We can go look. We can see that they had activity getting on and off the bus. If I'm at home and I want to see, well, my student said they're not going to ride today. Well, I got a notification that they did get on the bus. You can change your notifications in the settings too on what you want.
So I'd just piggyback on that.
Yes, sir.
So they're going to get notification, but it's not going to be like real time where they watch the bus come through a map or anything. It's just an alert, right?
So you can watch the bus on a map. It's a 7-second delay, so it kind of will move.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
then so on and so forth.
Just like Uber.
Yeah, it is just like.
Yes. So you can see it.
You know, in other districts I've been in that they use similar systems, I mean, you would see it start blowing up on Nextdoor or on Facebook. You know, if the bus is 5 minutes late or something, especially if it's raining, you may not be getting wet, so they'll just delay. So they do tend to watch the progress of the bus.
So I pulled up a little example where my cursor is. This is the campus portal, but it looks very similar with the parent side is what the app is supposed to be doing. You can see the direction of the bus and where it's going.
Perfect.
So my question is about emergencies and evacuation and reunification. So all these students, if we implement this next year for this next calendar year for the following school year, those students will have ID cards, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But the rest of the students won't have them yet? So, but you're saying that in an emergency, every student knows their number, so we could
Yes, ma'am.
put their number in to let everyone know which bus they're on, right? Is that what we're saying?
So in the event of an emergency or an evacuation, every student has a lunch number, an ID number.
Right.
And they would be able to give that to the driver, and you can enter that number, and it will pull them up on the tablet. Whether
Okay.
whether they ride or not, whether they're a regular rider or not, if their name is in the system with eSchool or with any of our internal programs, then
Okay, so
Smart
it
Tag
is,
will have
it is
access.
fairly as simple as it could be. The simpler version is everybody has a tag, and then even if they're not a regular rider, they would,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Mr. Simmons, you may not know this yet, but on the guardianship, as a former blended parent, does the custodial parent have the ability to make a change of that? Or, you know, this parent's going to pick up this time, or I saw that picture, but I didn't know how
Yes.
fluid that is.
So I've ran into some unique situations with all kinds of requests for, you know, joint custody, things of that nature. So you can change and edit. And on the student side, you can have 2 drop-off addresses. And that will just be communication with the school. So it's really nice you just have to make sure the driver is alerted that, well, this student goes to this address today.
Justin, since we may not see you for 3 or 4 months, since we have you here in person.
Yes, sir.
Last year, we had a lot of problems with athletic buses breaking down
Right.
at different places and at night with girls' teams and everything. Hey, have you any problems, and have you addressed that problem?
Yes, sir, we have addressed that. When buses go out of our district or out further than what did we say, 25-mile radius, we talk about sending a route bus, which is newer, safer, less likely to break down outside of our district. But yes, sir, that's exactly what we did. We trade out those buses for those long-distance runs
Great.
so that we don't have to pay a tow truck to go there or our driver to go pick it up.
So
I have something to tell the parents now.
Yes, sir.
will athletes have the cards? If say they're coming from a game, is that still in the same system?
So yes, sir. Any student with HEB will be in the system. It just depends on the access to the tablet. In the future, we could do tags for every student, and that's why I was thinking if the printer's there, you could do it with the future.
Yeah, I was just thinking, athletes who may not ride the bus every day, but do ride it to
correct.
sporting events.
This was in Stephenville ISD. This is what they did when it was a trip or even a field trip for anyone. They would sit down with an adult on the bus and just put all their names in the tablet so parents can track them going to sporting events or field trips.
Cool.
I have a question on the guardian required. So it
Yes, sir.
says that the patented guardian required feature helps ensure students are released only to authorized guardians.
Yes, sir.
Is the authority to make that determination now on the bus driver whether or not to release the kid off of the bus?
So yes, it is. If we release a student, we have to make sure we know exactly who we're releasing them to.
Okay, what
So-
kind of training are we going to provide to our bus drivers on this system and their now expanded role?
Yes, sir. The cost of the system comes with installation, and it also comes with training. So all of our employees will be trained, including our campuses. Our faculty for our campuses will have to go through the training to print the tags, to assign the tags, and then our drivers will go through the training based on what you see here on your screen. This information comes from the legal document in the e-school system. So whenever parents register their students,
So for clarifications, it's not a new requirement. It's something that they're already doing, but they don't have the software helping them.
exactly right.
Okay.
So we're having to do it now with a list of approved guardians on a piece of paper route sheet. And we go as far as IDing parents to make sure we have the right person.
So is the badge a requirement, or is it an option to bus riders?
It should be a requirement to ride a bus, 120%.
You said it should be. When we implement this, is it going to be a requirement, or is it going to be an option?
That decision should be made at a district level because there's a lot of factors to consider about the badge itself. I recommend the badge be mandatory to ride a school bus. You should give a grace window of, 2 to 3 weeks to make sure everyone can get a badge. So there's a lot of big changes that would have to take place with the culture change of the tag itself.
Yeah, it's a behavior change.
It is a behavior change. So I can tell you from experience, if you don't start off with requiring the tag, it will become a cantankerous process.
Yeah.
Because when you manually load students, that takes time. If I don't know who you are, I've got to look up your ID and your lunch number and punch it in.
So would that become a matter of board policy? Would we have to vote to make it 100% compliance, or would that be a regulatory thing that you would do? Okay.
Well, by state law, we do have to pick up students in the morning regardless of tag or no tag. But you could make it a policy in the afternoon. It's just like registering for a bus. It's registering for a bus and making sure you have your boarding pass to get on the bus.
As we implement this, I'd like to see that policy.
There you
And
go.
just let you know where you land on it, because
Yes, sir.
if we say it's mandatory after a 3-week period, what happens to a kid who doesn't have his badge at the 6-week period? We're gonna
Stuck at school.
he's stuck at school.
And parents get to pick
That's right. So it's always up for debate, especially with the little ones. With the little ones, it's tough to keep up with a badge. We've discussed that at length already on what approach to take. So we can definitely draft up a policy and
As you're putting your policy together, and it sounds like it's not gonna come back for the board, I would strongly recommend that there's some leniency, at least on our elementary school campuses.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're gonna get those kids home, but like, just in any ID policy, a lot of times they have to go get one. And there's a process involved in going to get one, but there may be 4 or 5 kids who have to go get one. Also, the younger kids, a lot of times, they're just gonna pin a copy of that to their backpack. A lot of times, they may lose an ID, they tend not to lose their backpacks, or at a much lower rate. With the older kids, you want to ride the bus, you've got to get your ID, and you might have a small window of time to make sure that you get that in place. But I think as we get used to having those IDs, we'll get much better at it.
yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Mr. Kerbo?
To follow up, on a procurement standpoint, this is a solution that's offered through a cooperative contract through the buy board. And it does have a lot of flexibility to it so that we can expand it as needed to apply to other areas.
Yeah, so that expansion, does it carry additional costs, and are we paying by subscriber or anything?
The initial outlay is just about 241,500 or so. Annual costs are 72,567 based on our user profile. So there will be a cost per student or cost per user fee assessed, and that'll fluctuate based on our usage.
So what we're looking at is just buses, but if you were to add it for, say, getting your meals in the cafeteria or your opening doors on campus, each module probably adds to the cost.
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you for clarifying that.
All right. Any other questions on the smart tags? All right. 23-10, exclusive beverage vending services.
Well, as you've seen in the Friday update and the agenda item, we've had an agreement with Pepsi for a long time as our beverage provider. And they provide vending beverage services as well as items, soft drinks and
beverages for concession at Pennington Field and all of our athletic venues. We've, to a point where that agreement expired, we issued a request for proposal and actually received 7 responses. I was amazed.
Yeah, that's,
But 4 of them didn't qualify because they sold beverages, but they didn't vend the beverages like we've asked for. So we narrowed it down to the 3 players, Coke, Dr. Pepper, and Pepsi, which was still a surprise to me that we got responses from all 3. As we went through the evaluation process, Coke and Pepsi clearly came out to be among the top. So we've continued with negotiations between those 2 and ask for additional concessions, concessions being considerations for in-kind services or value related to the contract. And after going through that for a lengthy period of time, Coca-Cola actually had a better offer. And you see the tabulation and the numbers there, and very supportive, obviously, of the vending program, plus what they can do in ways to support our athletic programs in the way of sideline gear, and that's extended not just to the 2 high schools, but also to the junior highs as well. And they made a very generous offer in regard to that, right there. So recommendation is for us to award this contract to Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages.
Any questions on the vending services?
So just a question, the distinction between the commissions and the donations. Is the commissions a percentage of the sales and the donations a straight donation from the district unconnected with the sale?
That's correct. There's an annual fee for exclusive beverage rights, which is Coca-Cola's $20,000 annually. Then there are donations that include sideline gear, cases of products, I think 600 cases, which is 350 more than what we're getting now. And then the commissions, though, are based on exactly what is sold through the vending machines. There are case product offerings, which if one of our groups or any of our groups wish to buy cases of product in bulk, we get a commission based on the number of cases that we sell.
Since we are recommended to switch providers, on the vending machines, are we getting the same amount and to replace exactly where we have them now?
Yeah, we have 83 vending machines currently throughout the district, and it'll be a 1-for-1 replacement. And so there'll be a logistical discussion as to the removal of the existing machines and the deployment of the new machines so that we can make that as seamless as possible. Our focus will be on the support of the athletic programs that are currently in place, basketball and the indoor sports, because those are the ones that are going to be impacted immediately. So we'll make sure we get the products in place and get those needs taken care of. There's a number of other pieces of equipment that the vendors will provide. The reach-in coolers, we have several different sizes, I think 3 or 4 different sizes. So whatever's needed for whatever application, Coca-Cola will provide, and those things will be in place, and those will be utilized within our programs.
I will say that the last couple of times we've done this in my 11 years, Pepsi was the only one that even came back with a offer. So this, as you said, is very unusual. My question is about the electrolyte type of drink. So is that something that is provided in this as well?
Yes, ma'am. And right now we have Gatorade, which
Right.
is bottled by Pepsi. They have Powerade, and they also have Body Armor. Both of those
Okay.
products are electrolytes, and that'll be what is on the sideline gear.
And I heard that they're making sure they get the right colors to the right schools.
That's correct. That was the first question I had from one of our department heads.
Always very
Our
important around here.
interested bystanders.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to the fun topic of integrated pest control services for district.
To describe how we've been procuring pest control services over the last several years, since we haven't really had a real defined way of doing that. We've just basically given a vendor instructions. Our purchase amounts averaged under $50,000 a year, so there wasn't a need for a formal procurement process. But as those in charge will tell you, you get what you paid for, whether it's quality or whether it's a right approach to a solution. So that's what we've been getting. And so there was a dissatisfaction with our current pest control provider. So we put out a request for proposal for this. And we received a number of responses, 3. Our current provider did not respond, which is why they're not among the vendors that were presented to you or included in the documentation there. So we went through there and we talked to all 3 vendors because we wanted to get further clarification about what their understanding and what they intended to provide. And after doing so, the solution that from ABC Pest Control represents the best response or the best value to the district.
I want to ask my question very judiciously. We have a few known sort of hot spots when it comes to pests in this district. Does this bid allow us to pay more attention to those known hotspots?
Yeah, it's a comprehensive plan, so it does take care of all our pest needs. And anything that is chronic or that needs specific.
Much better word.
Specific action, we'll certainly deploy them and they'll be aware of that and make sure those are covered.
Okay, good, thank you.
You started with the original bid, and then you have a revised bid. Do both of them get a mulligan?
No, just after we interviewed them and clarified what the revised bid is, what was finally presented to us. The original bid was the proposal by the low vendor was non-responsive, and after we interviewed with that vendor, we further learned that yes, they weren't prepared to address the issues the way we thought they needed to be addressed, and that was obvious. So that's why it shows revised.
Okay.
This is one area where I think it's important for us to spend a little bit more,
Yeah,
pay a little more attention, because we haven't been doing that, so.
Yeah, this will be a considerable increase to the budget for this, but we think it's the right move.
At any point with increased square footage, this might be a question for Josh, would this be something that we'd look at bringing in-house as part of the maintenance department? It's a lot of money. So.
Now, this would be a service that I would keep out-house and contracted. It's a lot of the regulations and legalities that go with that. You can very easily step into a landmine real quick. So we do maintain our certifications to be able to maintain and manage that service, but this is one I'd really suggest that we stay with contracted service.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, interlocal equipment agreement with E&I Cooperative Services.
This is an easy one. E&I Cooperative Services has a number of contracts that would be advantageous for the district to be able to utilize. There's no cost for us to join, so this is just a routine board action that's required for joining purchasing cooperatives. You see the resolution there, so we're asking that you approve that.
All right, any questions on the cooperative? All right, 8.07, revisions to board policy DEA local compensation and benefits compensation plan. Ms. Tuttle.
So one of the things that we know annually becomes a little bit tricky is when there are emergency closures, such as inclement weather, and we have to make decisions about the inclement weather days that are built into our calendar. And there's always a lag, even if the board chooses to adopt a resolution, there's always a lag between the event itself and the information for our payroll department and our human resources department to communicate with staff, for them to know what their plans need to be, but more importantly, for us to be able to approve that compensation. And so what we are bringing to you tonight is the first reading of a revision to board policy that would allow, with no necessary board action, it would allow for employees to be able to be compensated for up to 5 workdays of emergency school closures without requiring them to work the scheduled inclement weather days. Certainly, if there were more than that number of school closures, that would require a board action, but employees could absolutely be required to work those inclement weather days above those 5 days. But this is the revision that we're bringing to you for consideration tonight and for next meeting. But do you have any questions for me?
Cicely, when we did this in the spring, we did it one time for staff, and then we came back a few weeks later and we did it for long-term subs.
That's correct.
Does this cover long-term subs?
So this policy would not cover long-term subs because in our policies, we typically don't spell out specific employee groups and are referring more to our full-time employees. But what I can say is that if that is something that the board wishes to put into place, that could be handled even in advance through an annual resolution, should that be something that you wanted to do. For example, it would be a resolution that stated for any emergency school closures, the following employee groups would be included in, and it can reference this policy.
I would like to see that in conjunction with this policy.
And when you say in conjunction with, you mean a resolution, an annual resolution, as opposed to adding the employee groups to the policy, right?
What you just
Yeah.
suggested.
Okay.
So they
Got
go
it.
hand in hand.
Okay. And so we can talk about a time of year each year that we want to do that so that it's always in advance of when we would anticipate those closures being, again, so that there is no lag time for the payroll department and we don't have to come back to you, as you
So
mentioned.
this would be a once-a-year resolution that we would make to add long-term subs to the policy.
To, it would be about specifically the compensation, such that were there to be any
Just make them
events,
eligible for it.
they would be eligible for this, correct.
This policy would sit on its own. The resolution would be separate to pay that group.
So my question is about, this seems to speak to when there's a district-wide emergency, but if there were a campus-based emergency, would this apply, or do we need to have something specific for that?
That's something that we would need to talk about, because what that would do is it would put a group of employees already having used one, and then it would create 2 different numbers, obviously, and we would possibly have to take an action after the 4th day because some employees had already used a 5th.
I mean, that's never happened.
Sure, no, but that's a great question.
It could happen.
I think that would probably have to be handled through a resolution since it's fairly uncommon. And again, this might not cover every scenario, but we feel like we understand the desire of the board, and we feel like the board's desire is not to always have to come back with a resolution. So if we can take care of some of that in the policy, we would like to. Any other questions?
Cicely, I almost embarrassed to ask this. Why 5? Why not 4? Why not 6? Where'd you get the number 5?
That's a great question. So I'll tell you that for students, we know that students, there is a waiver for up to 5 days that at the state level. There are some things that have to be taken care of first, and we have that covered in our calendar with at least 2 additional days of equivalent instructional minutes, but we believe that 5 is a reasonable number that we feel you would be comfortable approving on an annual basis. Anything above that might be something you would want to have some authority to discuss. Great question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Tuttle. All right, we have one action item. Consider approval of donations for the November regular board meeting, presentation of certificates of appreciation.
I move that the board approve the November 2023 donations as presented.
Second.
I have a motion, a second for the board to approve the November 2023 donations as presented. Please vote. So all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, we're ready for open. Hey, it passed again. All right, we're ready for open forum number 2. Nothing? Okay. Do any board members have anything they'd like to request to be placed on a future board agenda? Nobody? All right, item 11.02, review of the board activity chart. The only thing on here that I see isn't covered is the lead HEB year 1 and year 2.
That happened this week.
Oh, it's already done.
Yeah.
Never mind.
And I was supposed to cover it and I didn't.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
That
We
darn
forgive
job
you.
gets in the way
All right.
every time.
So we look pretty well covered on everything else for the next through December. All right, so at this time, the board is going to adjourn into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the board will adjourn into closed session pursuant to sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.076.